Hello, this is Tom Lesher with the weekly Pele report from the Big Island of Hawaii. Today is December 26th, day after Christmas. So this report is going to take us right into 2011. I want to wish you all a happy new year, and I want to look back over 2010 because, of course, we're in the middle of a number of different cycles. Astrology is the study of cycles, and we've got cycles that began many years ago, but we're also right now this week dealing with Mars squaring Saturn. Mars was conjunct with Saturn July 31st last summer, and a big summer it was for many of us. Many changes, many initiations of new ideas, of new directions, of taking life and shaking it, needing to respond to the outside world trying to shake us, just like the wind is shaking my screen. But anyway, now what began July, Mars conjunct Saturn is initiating new responsibilities, new direction in the world, taking my vocation, my career, my future seriously, taking responsibility for my family and for myself. And now, this week, Mars comes into square Saturn. It's the first trial. It's really the first challenge to the goals that we set for ourselves, to the ideas that we had, to actions that we began, maybe partnerships, different situations, conditions, people. Now it's being tested. Now it's being checked. So this week can be a challenging week. It can be a time when it's necessary for us to reconnect with our core. And I know I've been saying this, reconnect with our core, a lot, and that we should do meditations and things like this. And I need to talk about that a little bit because it's a time for New Year's resolutions. We're coming into 2011. A lot of us are going to New Year's Eve parties. And, well, do we have resolutions? Saturn has to do with commitment. This Mars-Saturn has to do with, resolving a course of action, a course of, a direction for our lives, for our future selves, setting goals. So this is really the time for it, and I just want to say that this just really brings to mind something I've been thinking about a lot this week, and that is addictions. Because it's necessary when we want to access our core, when we want to lay a new foundation, when we want to set a new aim, that we tap into our bodies and tap into our core. And all forms of addiction, whether they are socially acceptable addictions like work and books and reading, movies, or whether they're frowned upon, sex, drugs, maybe rock and roll. But we have there's all forms of addictions, and these addictions are all about filling an emptiness inside of us. And I want to say that it is natural for the human being to experience this emptiness. This is a natural longing since we come out of the womb and are separated from our source, spiritual, infinite self, and we come into an ego that is separate right when we're born, that it's natural. And it's also natural in any human experience to experience grief. Whenever we experience the loss of something, it's natural to experience grief. Saturn, Capricorn, the 10th house, all has to do with grief. It has to do with separation. And I want to just say that this is a natural part of life in a human physical body. It's a natural part of life on earth. And every form of addiction is a desire to not feel these feelings of loss, grief, and sadness that connect us to essential aspects of our soul and give us the humanity, the compassion, the warmth, and just the ability to connect emotionally and to have these fulfilling relationships where we not only see ourselves and evolve, but we are in the experience of oneness and unity. Saturn is now moving through Libra, and many of us are feeling separate and isolated from our closest partners. Our closest relationships are really being challenged now. And I believe that part of the resolution for 2011, part of the calling for this next year, is to come into an appreciation and to come into a sense of gratitude. And the way to come into this sense of appreciation and the sense of gratitude is to come into our hearts. And the way to come into our hearts is to let go of distractions, of our desires to fill that emptiness, to escape our grief, to avoid our longing, and not look at our humanity, at our separation, at our sorrow, but to fill it with tobacco or a movie or, just going out. So when we fill ourselves with other forms of addictions and sugar and chocolate and coffee and have another Starbucks and have another orgasm or have another movie, it dulls our senses. It takes us out of our core, and we become less able to perceive. This is the big danger of addictions. It's that our human body is our instrument, and our 5 physical senses and our 6th sense and beyond connect us to that spiritual subtle realm, which is the natural purpose of that longing. So the natural purpose of our longing is to help us to feel, to evolve, and to connect with the higher forms of life, with the higher vibrations of existence, with the higher harmonics that exist. And this is why it's so necessary. And when we get into Kundalini Yoga and other forms of yoga, there's no drinking, there's no drugs, there's no alcohol. You got to stop all of these forms, that forms of addictions that take us away and dull our perception, close our third eye, and lead us farther down into the well of separation, when our true joy and our true future as a human species does not lie down in the well of separation, but here, in the moment, fully present with whatever person, place, sound, light that we are experiencing. So I encourage you this New Year's Eve as you toast your champagne or whatever you're doing, you know, that you just kind of keep in mind, and maybe New Year's Day when it's all wearing off, you know, that it takes days. For me, it takes, like, if I see a movie, it takes 3 days for that movie to to clear out of my psychic space. I mean, it's really, you know, if I have like a glass of wine or a glass of champagne or something, it takes, you know, it's a day or so. If you really tap into, you know, your body, you know, really closely, you will feel effects, you know, much more profoundly than if you're like constantly bombarding, you know, your physical self with all kinds of chemicals. So I would encourage you that as you make resolutions and as you look forward and, you know, as you set goals for 2011 and beyond, that you really do it from a place of purity, a place of honesty, and a place of integrity that brings you a lot of joy, happiness, connection, and compassion in 2011. By the way, you know, the moon moves into Sag Friday night. It's going to be a wonderful New Year's Eve. It's a little tense around Wednesday when Mars hits Saturn. Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, it's a little heavier energy, but it really looks like a really fine time to socialize and do your vision questing and have a good New Year's Eve. So, namaste, fare thee well, I wish you the best, and aloha.